Good evening, everyone. We're going to begin this evening with an informational message from our East Great Plains Volunteer Fire Department. Chief?
Thank you. Good evening. For those that don't know me, my name is Keith Milton. I'm the Fire Chief of the East Great Plains Volunteer Fire Company here in town. Again, I'd like to thank you for allowing me just to take a few minutes of your time on your very busy night. So again, thank you. This year's a big year for my department. We celebrate our 75th anniversary this year. So we're pretty excited about it. We got some stuff in the works and just looking to pass my information on to the City Council. Again, we'll be celebrating our 75th anniversary starting in May with our yearly banquet. The celebration is going to continue in August, starting with a rededication ceremony of the fire department on Sunday, August 5th. Then on Thursday, August 9th through August 12th, we're going to be hosting a 4-day carnival at the Three Rivers Community College campus on the London Turnpike. We currently got a signed contract with Rockwell Amusement, who does the fair down along the marina. So we're looking pretty good there. Also, Saturday, August 11th, starting at 5 p.m., we're going to be having our parade. I'm currently working with the Norwich Police Department and Chief Daly and the State DOT. Lining up is going to be New London Turnpike. I call it the wooded section between Asylum Street and the lower end of Dudley Street. And we're going to continue right down New London Turnpike. We're praying to God that the State DOT will help us and grant us some leeway in crossing over Route 82 and continuing on, and the parade will end at Three Rivers, where the festivities are going to continue that night as well as with the carnival. Working with the town fire marshal and stuff like that, we're trying to have a fireworks display that night, approximately 9 o'clock at night, to end that night. So we got a lot going on. I guess is the rededication ceremony, the carnival, parade are free and open to the public. And like I said, we're also going to be working with the Public Works Department, the Public Utility Department as well for some stuff that we're going to be needing. We've held numerous fundraisers over the years that have gone towards our celebration. And we have a few more fundraisers coming up. The next one off the top of my head is May 6th, breakfast fundraiser right over here at Billy Wilson's, 10 to 12. So that'll be coming out in the very near future. And you're probably going to see some of my members out and about soliciting funds for our ad book that we're doing. So if you see them out and about, that's what they're doing. So again, I'm not here to ask for money, but asking the City Council for their support of our celebration and any assistance that we might require from the city for our celebration. So keep an eye out for the invites of our celebration. I'll be coming to you very shortly, and hope to see everyone there. And thank you very much for your time. If anyone has any questions, I'll answer them the best I can.
Members? Yes, Alderman DeLucia.
Chief, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, have you thought to reach out to Norwich Events Organization, the Chamber, and see if we can really make this a big deal? Because it is a big deal.
Correct. We are actually in the process of doing that now. We're in the very beginning stages of doing it. I feel my personal opinion, we're a little behind, but we are in the process of reaching out to a lot of the civic organizations and stuff. We were trying to get some email lists and contact information, which I just have. I just got some the other day. So that's my project for this coming week here, is to line those up. So yeah, we're reaching out. They just sent out the invites to, I think they sent it out to close to 200 fire departments and ambulance corps that are kind of up and down along the Connecticut River and on this side of the state. So we'll see what happens there.
just on a personal, I mean, any information you want to send me electronically,
okay.
I'll put it on my Twitter feed, my Facebook page, we'll get it
great.
out there.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members have? Yes, Alderman Gould.
Did you? No? Oh, okay. Good evening, Chief Milton.
Good evening.
Would just ask that if you could put into an email or a flyer of some sort that can come to the council so that we could put it up on the city's website.
Oh, okay, yeah. Great idea, yeah.
All those dates, because there are a lot of people who may see it there and not see it someplace else. And I think that's a good way to get the information out about our 75th anniversary.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment? Chief, thanks very much.
All right, no, thank you very much. Have a great night. Thank you.
It's good to see you. Good evening. Would everyone please rise? And we'll be led in prayer by Alderwoman Gould.
Almighty God, we ask for your blessing upon the members of this council as we assemble here in this chamber to conduct the ongoing business of our city. With your guidance, we will strive to ensure that all our decisions are for the common good, and your inspiration will instill respect, compassion, and thoughtfulness in all our deliberations. Give us the strength and wisdom to lead by example as the people's representatives, and that peace and harmony will mark all our proceedings and keep us faithful to the trust placed in us by the citizens of your community. Amen.
Amen. All right. Alderman DeLucia, please.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I could ask you to please remain standing. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for Chief Red McKeon, who passed away over the weekend. Red McKeon was the chief of Ockham Firehouse for 35 years. His involvement in improving the lives of people across the nation, and I mean that literally, is legendary. Was known face-to-face with 3 sitting presidents. His work on legislative matters on behalf of public safety across this state is very well known. I had the honor of working with him on a number of pieces of legislation when I served in Hartford. It's fitting that the park in Ockham is named after him. He was one of the, if not the driving force behind getting that roto mill cleaned up and restored for public use for the people of Ockham. His legacy will live on beyond him, but I think it's fitting that we here tonight acknowledge what he meant to this community. Thank you.
Adoption of minutes, February 5th and 20th, 2018.
Entertain a motion, please. Bring it forward. Alderwoman Stacey Gould, is there a second? Alderwoman Burnham. Is there discussion, questions, concerns, or omissions that anyone would like to note? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Vote is 7-0.
Public hearing, number 1, an ordinance relative to the pension plan adjustments for non-union personnel and elected officials participating in the City of Norwich Employee Retirement Fund.
I declare this public hearing open and invite persons who wish to speak on behalf of this agreement come forward. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. Anyone like to speak in favor of this ordinance? Anyone like to speak in favor of this ordinance? Anyone like to speak in favor of this ordinance? Would anyone like to speak against this ordinance? Anyone against this ordinance? The third and final time. Anyone against this ordinance? Seeing none, I declare this hearing closed.
An ordinance relative to pension adjustments for non-union personnel and elected officials participating in the City of Norwich Employee Retirement Fund.
Entertain a motion to bring it forward, please. Alderwoman Stacey Gould, second Alderwoman Filbert. Is there discussion? Alderwoman DeLucia.
Again, I know that this follows what the Union Coalition agreed to. The non-union employees don't have the same representation. However, I've heard from a few who appreciated the fact that there was dialogue in both directions, and they appreciate the fact that they did have their voice heard. I appreciate their willingness to participate and work in behalf of what was best for the city in the long term in terms of its pension fund. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? Seeing none. Call for roll. Again, call the roll, please. Yeah.
Alderwoman Burnham?
Yep.
Alderman Browning?
Yes.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderwoman Philbrook?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Nash?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0. It's unanimous.
Thank you. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the city manager's report for March 5th, 2018. I attended the Southeastern Council of Government meeting on February 21st. U.S. Congressman Joseph Courtney was the guest speaker. I also attended the Southeast Area Transit Board of Directors meeting immediately following, where legislative outreach opportunities were discussed. SEAT, along with other transit districts, have been advised to expect a 50% reduction in state funding, which could require nearly a 20% reduction in SEAT service. It was recommended by the SEAT members of the SEAT board to try to meet with member representatives in the district that are served by SEAT. Josh Pothier and I met with Abby Dolliver, Superintendent of Schools and Staff, to discuss their preliminary budget. We also met with city departments and Otis Library the week of February 26th. I had my monthly staff meeting with department heads. Dina Sears Graves, Vice President of Community Impact at United Way, attended. She thanked the city employees for their donations and volunteering. She also stated that she worked with the city employee Leanne Gomes, Deanna Rhodes, and Kathleen Crees on the Working Cities Challenge Grant. Unfortunately, the city did not receive the challenge grant, but the United Way was so impressed with the city's application that they will be awarding the city a 3-year, $100,000 per year grant to aid in the training of the city workforce. This grant will aid the city to assist low and diverse households in Norwich to become financially stable by training them for manufacturing, pipeline job opportunities that will become available at Electric Boat. City Treasurer Mike Gualtieri, Deputy Controller Tony Madera handed out a revised revenue collections and petty cash policy and will be meeting with department heads that handle cash. Kathy Grease, Community Development Supervisor, stated that the CDBG grant applications would be reviewed by the CDA at the meeting of February 28th, and that recommendations will be presented to Council in April. CPR and AED first aid training for employees was held on February 23rd. 12 employees participated and received certification. The city's portable AED unit is located on the first floor on the wall between the registrar and assessor's office. The purchase and sales agreement for 6880 was executed, and a $20,000 deposit check has been received from Otis Home LLC. The development agreement for 19 North Street has been signed by the developer and is being reviewed by the Corporation Council. I had the pleasure of judging the Norwich Sunrise Rotary four-way test speech contest that was held at NFA in the Sidney Frank Center on March 1st. There was a very impressive group of high school students vying to be selected for the semifinals. The second city goal-setting session was held on March 3rd, 2018 at Foundry 66. Jim O'Shea will be preparing the final report and will be presented to the council in April. The 5th annual St. Patrick's Day Parade was held on Sunday, March 4th. Thank you to the committee and the volunteers that make this event a success for downtown. I would also like to congratulate Janice Thompson from Human Services and Vicki Daniels from Recreation, who have retired from the city. Both have over 30 years of service with the city, and I wish them well. That concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you. Are there questions for the city manager? Alderwoman Philbrick.
I have two, Mr. City Manager. Do you anticipate that SEAT will be looking to the city to supplement their budget because of the lost revenue from the state?
We're in the middle of doing their budget now. It hasn't come up yet. I would hope that that would not be the case. I think that, but there will be an impact on reduction of services, though. But the supplementing the budget has not been a topic yet, Councilor.
Okay. And then my second comment is in regard to the AED. It was brought to my attention via email by a member of the city that the location of the AED was probably not the most opportune. And I, in turn, contacted Chief Scan, who was instrumental in having it moved to an appropriate place. So I thank him. I thank the citizen, first of all, for bringing it to my attention, and I second the fact that the chief was so quick to have this matter resolved, because it is a life and death situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the city manager or concerns? Yes, Alderwoman Burnham.
No, I think it's important to point out, thank you for the report. It's very informative, but I think it's important to congratulate those who were involved in the Working Cities Challenge grant. It's not very often that you get a grant when you don't get a grant, so it just goes to show you how great our employees are, and I think that this will be a boon to our region and our city to help some of these citizens get great paying jobs.
Thank you. Any further questions, concerns? I would just share one comment. In addition to Janice Thompson and Vicki Daniels leaving, Officer John Lay left city service on Friday. He's taking a post up in the Killingly-Danielson area. This officer, as everyone can certainly remember, sustained life-threatening injuries in the line of duty. Thank God he survived. But we're going to miss him as well and all that he has contributed to this community. It's not easy being a police officer today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Before we continue, and I would like to ask for a moment of personal privilege, please.
Yes, go right ahead.
Those of you that know me know I have no trouble mincing my words. So what I'm going to say, I will say to you before I start. If the shoe fits, feel free to put it on. There has been very negative press lately, primarily in the Norwich Bulletin, regarding two members of the people that sit up here, two people who have been elected by a group of their peers, the two highest vote-getting people in the last election. Why some of you feel the need to bring up personal things that have no bearing on the business of the city, to me, is quite honestly disgusting. Have you nothing better to do with your time than to dig into the personal finances of a member of this council? I have been the subject of the front page of the bulletin. I was found guilty by the Ethics Commission, a board that has no power whatsoever. But my picture was front page on the Norwich Bulletin. I was vilified. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. I was pushed to the point where I thought that my only option was to end my life because I had brought such shame and embarrassment upon my family. There is no need for the newspaper to write such salacious articles. You have no idea of the damage that you do to people when you write these articles that are not even newsworthy. Their sole intent, in my opinion, is to embarrass and humiliate. They were directed, they must have said 3 times in the first 3 paragraphs, the Republicans, the Republicans, the Republicans. So I will tell you one thing, and you can do with it whatever you want. When you attack one of us, you attack all of us. And we will stand and defend each other. You will not embarrass. You will not humiliate. And you will not degrade us. You elected us to do a job. I have said it many times in these council chambers. There isn't a person in this room, I don't care who you are or who the hell you think you are, that you don't have a skeleton in your closet. And if you're lucky, if you're fortunate, somebody will not go around opening and slamming doors and shaking things so that it will fall out. So please, disregard this nonsense that sells newspapers, the Norwich Inquirer, I like to call it, and let us get on with the business at hand. I'm not going to speak for the Democrats because it's already been, the divide has already been made. When the newspaper said, the Republicans, the Republicans. If you want us to be a cohesive group, then let us be a cohesive group. And I don't mean to embarrass the 2 gentlemen who are up here. They are humble and proud gentlemen. They don't need me to stand up and speak for them, but they won't, because they are gentlemen. They will not stand up and defend themselves. They don't need defending. So please, I ask of you, don't read and don't buy that nonsense, literally and figuratively, because you never know. It might be you next week, might be you next week, because if it sells papers, that's all it cares about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, point of clarification, does that open the floor for commentary on this, on Alderwoman Philbrick's comments, or if I have comments of my own, would I need to request a moment of personal privilege?
If you need a moment of personal privilege this evening, I will grant it. I would say, though, your comments are your own. Keeping in mind we're a body of 7, and only 7, and we have a long road going forward, a lot of work to do together. That's all I would say. But if you'd like a moment, sir, it certainly would be granted to you.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Mayor. I'll withhold my comments to a later date. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Alderman Brown.
I will take the moment of personal privilege. I really don't want to comment on what was in the article, which has offended other members of the City Council. I just would like to say that I accept that sitting up here, there will be articles written about me by the Norwich Bulletin and probably the New London Day. And I will probably not like the contents, and I'll probably take offense, but I will live with them. And I would also like to point out that the Norwich Bulletin's publisher and the Norwich Bulletin's editor did come in and did want to speak, but the format did not allow them to speak this evening. I understand that Mr. Nystrom will be, Mayor Nystrom, excuse me, will be talking to them later. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Moving on. Citizen comment on resolutions. Sorry. I have a sign-up sheet. If you did not sign up, that doesn't mean you still cannot speak. When I go through the list and following that, you're invited to join us. I remind you 3 minutes, and please state your name and address for the record at the microphone. First person signed up is Dale Plummer.
Dale Plummer, 25 Broadway, the Warwick Hotel. I'd just like to point out that in 1999, the Warwick Hotel was scheduled for demolition by the city of Norwich, and we went through a process very similar to that we're now going through with the Reed and Hughes. I am quite confident that we have a developer, the Women's Institute, who have a very proven track record and who have done an amazing job of marshaling resources to stabilize this building, and I'm very confident that we will see this developed. So I would like to speak in favor of resolution number 2 and urge you to give this the time that is needed to have this come to pass. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next person is Betsy Crum.
Good evening. I'm Betsy Crum with the Women's Institute. We're at 75 Charter Oak Avenue in Hartford. When we were here back in mid-December, we requested a little extra time. I think we had mentioned to you at the time, this is with respect to the Reed and Hughes redevelopment, that we had raised $500,000 toward the stabilization, and that our board, however, was concerned about the risk to the organization. And we asked for a little extra time, which you graciously granted us, I think 60 days, expired yesterday, to try to raise additional non-recourse financing. I just want to update you that we were able to raise $250,000 in non-recourse financing, which is a fantastic progress that we've made, and we have another $150,000 request pending with the Norwich Community Development Corporation tomorrow. They're meeting tomorrow at 2, and that with that, my board voted late last week to move ahead with the project, with the financing that we've assembled. So the resolution that is before you shortly will allow us to do that, and I'm happy to answer questions when the time comes. But I mainly wanted to sort of point out that the process not only got us additional financing for this project, it also built a lot of goodwill. The state has now stepped in and put its own dollars in, Connecticut Main Street program, nonprofit lenders, and if the Norwich Community Development Corporation comes in, a local organization as well. So it's been a terrific community development process to take those couple of months, and I know it was difficult to do. So, you know, based on these commitments and subject to a positive outcome tomorrow, we're ready to move forward with the stabilization. So, thank you.
Thank you. Susan Massey.
Susan Massey, 1 Sachem Terrace, Norwich. I hope that you will continue the commendable foresight that you have shown by choosing the Women's Institute, and will consider whatever is needed to move the project forward. I feel it is very important for the renewal of downtown Norwich, and I am in favor of resolution number 2. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes those who signed in advance. Anyone else like to speak on the resolutions? Yes, sir. Mr. Crabbe.
Good evening. David Crabb, 47 Prospect Street. My questions about Resolution 2 hinge on the wording, and my first line perhaps could have been amended. This if-or resolution requires, perhaps demands, and in other words, it's a golden opportunity, to name an ad hoc committee to increase the council's background for any downtown location based upon numerous regulation changes over time. For example, CCOG's recent 5-year plan for the Norwich and other municipalities in their annex. Plus, the 2012 council adopted a resolution naming Jennifer Gottlieb to administer a fair housing plan in mid-July of that year. That housing plan had references to LBJ's economic opportunity, the war on poverty for others, objectives. And we know that bureaucrats are known to constantly change the wording and the objectives in any plan, so that's been a long time ago. We know some Norwich homeless are using tax-funded elderly housing also. How many and how long is the waiting list for the elderly to use the housing that's filled by some homeless? Along with the addition of an opioid specialist to the welfare department, via a state grant no less, how many opioid clients are homeless? How long until veterans that are homeless are just another crutch like the elderly to move others into this downtown location? I'll bet the Reed and Hughes developer knows all of these aspects. This info accumulated by an ad hoc committee would be beneficial to all the candidates running for council and mayor in November. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else like to join us in citizen comment? Yes, sir. Mr. Bowie.
Good evening, Rodney Bowie, 62 Roosevelt Avenue. Listen to the presentation from Women's Institute. They've raised enough money already to do something with the building. We readily came up with $800,000, if I recall, to tear the damn thing down. Now, they've done pretty good raising some money already. I would like to see a roof put on it. But the city owns it, and I haven't understood for the past 20 years how come the city hasn't had to put a roof on a damn building they got. I own several buildings here in this town, and I would be kicked to the curb if I hadn't kept a roof on a building. So it's up to the city to put a roof on that building now. They can't just keep on waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. But $800,000 will put a hell of a roof on it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else under citizen comment? Anyone else under citizen comment? This time, anyone else under citizen comment? Seeing none, I declare citizen comment closed. And we thank you all for sharing your ideas and concerns.
New business resolution 1, relative to reappointments to the redevelopment agency.
Entertain a motion to bring the resolution forward, please. President Pro Tem Nash, second Alderman Joe DeLucia. Is there discussion? No discussion. Okay. For the benefit of the public, the appointees recommended in Resolution 1 are Mr. Mark Koulos as a regular member, and his term would expire on February 28, 2022. And the second portion, we have two people, Mr. Robert Buckley and Shane Roberts, and these are for reappointments as regular members of RDA as well, and their terms expire 2/28/2023. All those in favor of Resolution 1? Unanimous. The vote is 7-0.
Number 2, relative to the project with the Women's Institute regarding 193-201 Main Street.
Motion to bring it forward, please. President Pro Tem Nash, second Alderwoman Stacey Gould. Is there discussion or questions? Alderwoman Gould?
Ms. Crum, would you mind coming to the podium, please?
I'm also introducing Christine Rogers, who's the senior project manager in charge of this development.
Thank you both for being here tonight. I only have one question. You stated earlier that you have $250,000 in non-recourse funding already in hand. You're waiting to hear on a few other options for more funding. What happens if those options do not come to fruition?
The board, my board of directors voted on that they wanted to move forward pending the outcome of the Norwich Community Development Corporation vote tomorrow. If that does not move forward, we have to really reconsider the 250,000 is a huge amount of funding, but not enough to sort of get to what we had asked the architect and the contractor was kind of the critical place where we knew that the building was stable enough and there was no danger of it not being completely stabilized and renovated. They felt that that was somewhere in the 300 to 350 range. So that was the piece that is at risk. And we would, so it's, you know, I would have liked to have come to you tonight with a decision from NCDC. Unfortunately, they weren't able to set a meeting before tomorrow. So I didn't want to not come tonight, but that was the position they were at.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman DeLucia.
It's my understanding that at least most of the remaining funds have been committed, just not yet received. Is that accurate?
The remaining funds for the stabilization phase?
Yes.
What we have is, in addition to the 250,000 that's been committed, another 450,000 of full recourse funds that have been committed that together, again, if we're successful tomorrow, we'll have enough money for the full stabilization phase and a little bit more to get us to the to do drawings and engineering and so forth for the full construction phase. So the short answer is we'll have enough money to start to work toward getting all the financing together to renovate it for 20 units of housing.
But this entire package hinges on the $150,000 from NCDC in the code compliance part of the downtown bond.
At this moment, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Browning.
I suspect there's a way to do this, but I know that the money was set aside for code compliance, and this is your primarily stabilization. How are you going to handle this so that you can obviously use this money, which was for code compliance, for stabilization? Is there a middle ground?
You know, you're asking an interesting question, and it's one that
Excuse me, could you
Yeah.
please identify your name?
Oh, hi, I'm Christine Rogers. I'm the Senior Development Manager for this project. It's a question that we have had to grapple with all of our funders. You know, when we go and we ask for funds to stabilize a property, usually funders are used to giving funds to construct housing. They're used to giving their funding conditional on a certificate of occupancy. And so this is something where we have asked all of our funders, and we have been so pleased to see that flexibility and that partnership coming from everyone in our funding stack. It's something we've had long discussions with the NCDC about, them finding ability within their guidelines to look at the work that we're doing as part of code compliance, because ultimately we'll bring the whole building up to code, but we can't do that without getting through the stabilization phase first.
One way that we've been talking about approaching it, I think as Christine said, all of the work that we do will be captured in the eventual redevelopment of the property. So it will eventually be subject to code compliance. But we also, in our agreement with the city, we have throughout the stabilization phase, we have to keep a close relationship with the town engineer, I think, and the building department, and that they have the ability to approve or not approve the work as it goes along. So one of the things we're asking NCDC to consider in this code correction, that sort of in lieu of a CO, in lieu of a certificate of occupancy, that the approval of the town building official be sort of seen as equivalent to that. It is an exception, but as Christine said, there hasn't been anything about our applications that have not required some of these funders to make an exception. It's the nature of a stabilization project. So,
Alderman Browning, do you still have the floor?
I don't have anything further.
Oh, thank you. Alderman DeLucia for the second time.
This is more of a statement than a question. It's my understanding that Corporation Council is confident that we are within the guideline, well, the NCDC board will be within its guidelines to award this money if they decide to. We're not really making an exception as I understand it. Is that correct?
Well, the council doesn't make the determination, NCDC does, and staff at NCDC has concluded that this is qualified and consistent within their plan, their progress plan that goes before the board. The board will recommend it or not. One of the things that you've raised is the question about time. The agreements, the development agreement that the council approved, I think in April of 2011, uses certificate of occupancy or other milestone. And the other milestone, I think, is what you're discussing. Because this is the stabilization phase, a certificate of occupancy isn't going to be issued until you've completed that and then completed the funding and completed the development phase. So you're talking about potentially 4 or 5 years out before you get to that stage. So I think that an understanding has to be reached between NCDC and the Women's Institute as to what is an appropriate milestone and how is that measured. It could be the city's recommendation based on phases of development as stabilization goes along. It could be a completion of stabilization, whatever. That'll be negotiated by council for NCDC with the Women's Institute, but that's basically how that would work. So I think the recommendation is that it is qualified by NCDC's recommendation is that, and then the terms that would have to be worked out would have to use some alternative milestone, which is called for in the development agreement. Not the development agreement, the development plan. Better term.
So we can act tonight, or we could hold over until next week, next meeting, until after NCDC is acted. Is there a pro and a con on either side of that? Is there some direction that we should follow? Or I guess to narrow that question down, are we clear to act tonight on this resolution?
You can act on the resolution tonight. Under our rules with respect to reconsideration, if things don't go tomorrow based on staff recommendation or whatever, if they say no or in the next 2 weeks they cannot reach an agreement and it falls apart, I think you have the power to reconsider your vote as long as somebody from the affirmative side seeks to reconsider, or you can postpone action on the motion for 2 weeks, see what happens.
From my standpoint, I don't think it particularly matters, except that our extension to our development agreement expired yesterday or today, and so we wouldn't want to, if we postpone, we wouldn't want to lose our rights to continue under that.
So I yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further questions or comments? Yes, Alderman Filbert.
I just need clarification on a couple of things. There was an internal email that we received that identified your funding sources. So if you'll indulge me, the Connecticut Main Street project, $50,000 approved, commitment letter pending. The Veterans Housing Association, $15,000, $50,000 committed. Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation, $150 approved, commitment letter pending. NCDC code correction, $150,000 applied for. You applied for $250,000, and their decision pending 3/6/18. This is the one that causes me the most confusion. First of all, in speaking with Mr. Mills, it is not NCDC that will be making this decision. It's an independent board.
Yeah, I guess, I wasn't aware that the Code Correction Committee was separate from the NCDC.
I think that's very important that the public be aware that it's an independent, it's not NCDC. Also, in speaking with Mr. Mills, he had told me that, or it was my understanding, that the largest amount of money ever allocated for code correction is $100,000. So we're already tipping the scale here. And then my next question to him was, so if there was an affirmative vote for the 150, how much money does that leave in the code correction account?
I have no idea
okay,
how
well,
much
I'm going to
money's
answer.
in-
It's a rhetorical question.
Okay.
He said it would be cutting it very, very, very close, so that we would literally be putting all our eggs in one basket. So if I looked at, and I won't go through the rest of the list, you have $261,689.33 committed. The remainder is approved, but having worked in the banking business. I know that commitment letters sometimes are different than approvals. I'm a little concerned, and I'm also a little concerned with the fact that you say that if you are not fortunate enough to get the $150,000 from NCDC, that this will sort of be the end of your project. And a $500,000 plus, I think that $115,000, it's confusing to me that that small amount of money in the big scope of things would be.
Yeah, I can address that if you like.
Please.
I think it sort of gets to the risk of taking on stabilization of a building that's been vacant for 20 years and is in the kind of condition it's in, is that as we start to stabilize it, it will become more stable every day, right? I mean, as we start to do the work. But there's the structural engineer and the contractor are going to, and the town folks are going to work very closely, especially during the early stages. And as the more money we spend, the less risky it gets. But my board was very concerned about taking on a risk to our organization, which is a nonprofit and doesn't, have particularly deep pockets, to take on a risk that if we spent, let's say, $350,000, $400,000 and found that the building could not be saved, that having to repay that $400,000 and being completely on the hook for that full recourse would be too risky to our organization to take that on. So the bank agreed to lend it to us, but it was full recourse, and that's why we set out to raise grants and forgivable loans, non-recourse, to get to the point where we could spend $350,000, somewhere in that range, $350,000, and at that point, knowing that the building would stand and be stable and be able to be redeveloped.
Okay, and then my last question that was brought up to me was, and this may just be a housekeeping, I don't believe that the city, you don't own the building.
Correct.
We own the building.
That's correct.
We're a nonprofit also. We don't have deep pockets.
Right.
Just so that you're so how can the Women's Institute apply for funds through the code correction when you don't own the building? The city can't apply for the money. You can't apply for it, or is this one of those exceptions that we were just talking about?
Well, in our development agreement, the city retains the right to own the building through the stabilization period unless one of the lenders requires it as collateral. And so I'm not sure if the code corrections would, I think it's a grant, so it would require it as collateral, but we have what is considered full site control through our development agreement. So the city, it was the city that decided they didn't want to sell it to us or deed it to us. They wanted to own it so that if something were to go wrong, they would have it. But it's been, to be honest, kind of tricky to work through with all these funders, getting funding from them, getting loans from them when we don't have collateral to give them. That's why the full recourse to our organization. So in a way, to not even have the collateral, and the collateral is worth almost nothing as it is. It's almost like negative collateral because it's in danger of collapsing. It puts a ton of risk on us, and frankly, you've been bearing the risk for 20 years of the building as well, as you know. So this seemed to be the best situation to enable us to kind of pull together resources from the state, from some local resources, not municipal but local, to get private lenders. There's a lot of folks who are willing to kind of put a piece of the pie into this. The issue of ownership, I don't think came up particularly because we have site control.
Okay, thank you.
Through that agreement.
Yes, other members of council would like to ask questions. Alderman Brown.
First of all, I think 150,000 is like 30% of the amount, correct, Joe? Yeah, Joe is better at math than I am. But the second thing is I'd like to ask Attorney Driscoll, and if it's more appropriate to go to our bond counsel for this, it would be good to have a letter of opinion if NCDC approves it, stating that their efforts fit within the parameters of the bond as it was originally put forward for code compliance. And I don't know if that's normally done, but I think that that's a relevant question.
It isn't normally done in the sense the bond's been approved by the voters. The bond is fairly broad in the language. It allows the city to designate to an entity all the powers of Chapter 130, which is the RDA's powers, including community development, Chapter 132, which would be the Municipal Development Agency, and finally it's Title 30, I think it's Chapter 588L, maybe, Manufacturers Assistance, and to set the rules. So, for example, I think the question came up about more than $100,000. $100,000 is the standard, but the plan that NCDC put together, which the council adopted, permits larger amounts to be considered on a case-by-case basis. So that seems to be the basis on which they would go up to something more than $150,000. They really determine, and the agreement that they posited and presented to the city provides that they'll ensure that it's compliant with the terms of the development plan. So that's really what you're relying upon, is their assurance to the council that they are acting within the language of the development plan as it was developed. There was a public hearing on the same. It was adopted in April of 2011, so I'm going against March of 2011. There would have been a public hearing on it, and the council at that time had it. The plan.
Can I simplify? What you're saying is that once the bond was set forward, regardless of the technical language in the bond that was enacted, it's NCDC who's determining whether they are complying with the technical language of the bond?
If they are complying with the technical, and to set the terms and conditions on which, this is a private activity bond versus a non-taxable bond, so there's a little bit of flex there. But NCDC would establish the process and the procedure by which applications are made, approved, as well as whether they be grants or loans. The council has the ability to move monies in and out of the different funds, the three categories, but it has to leave at least 30% of the money in each of the categories. Other than that, the oversight is general oversight on the part of the council of NCDC. You can speak with them, deal with them, but NCDC really is orchestrating the program.
So do we have any oversight?
You do. You can certainly ask NCDC to make reports, let you know what's happened, how the applications are filed, that sort of thing. But on the decision about an individual application is designed specifically to try to minimize any political influence that might come in and pro or con a particular project.
Okay.
Is there further question or comment? Alderman Stacey Gould.
I'm sorry, and it's not directed to you. In the third paragraph, whereas in November of 2018, I believe that should be whereas in November of 2017. In the third paragraph of resolution number 2.
That sounds right.
So if we need a motion to correct that, I'd like to make a motion that we amend the resolution to reflect in the third paragraph, it should say in November of 2017.
Is there a second? Alderman Nash. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. The amendment 7-0. On the resolution as amended, is there further questions, comments? I will make mine very brief, then speak last, I guess. The program itself, which was voted on by the voters 2010, it was established that this city would stand really separate and apart from other communities in trying to build public and private partnerships. And I think we're seeing the results of that achievement when you look at the buildings that are being purchased and invested in our downtown, never more than this year than all the prior years. On this particular project, it is my understanding, and having had discussions with the ladies in front of us here, that the stabilization work that will be done is in fact going to end up being part of the renovation of the building. While you can't say they're one and the same, the purpose of stabilizing the building is in fact to save the building, and thus the work that will be done, that will also be reviewed by our city personnel while it's in progress, is in fact to be part of the whole when it's done. The Corporation Council referred to what we can do as a council. Certainly getting reports and reviewing the data, we can do that. But the truth is, it's as he stated, it was established that there'd be no political influence, and it was also established that even NCDC did not have a vote. That's why you have an independent board of business persons in our community. They're made up of business owners, someone from the banking community and so forth, lending institutions, and they make the final call so that the decision is really made by that independent board that has been referred to tonight. And I think that's what makes this program unique. We're the only city that I know of in the nation that has all three components. Other cities have an individual component, or maybe two of the three, but we're the only ones with three of them. And its design was to stimulate investment. And we're seeing the results of that. And even this very difficult project, and make no mistake, this is a very difficult project. The fact that we have potentially $700,000 available for the project as we speak tonight, and should that board, and I can tell you, I don't even know a single member on that board, and I don't want to know the members on that board. I couldn't name one. They will have a review of all of this that we've discussed tonight and the development agreement and everything else. And I think that's where it belongs, in the private sector at that point. But I think it says to anyone looking at development that this city is looking to work with the private side, because that's really important. We want to encourage private investment in our community, particularly at a time when the state is in such disarray. We need to find our own way of getting out of this financial hole, and one of that is growth in our grand list. And the nice thing about this, and this is my last statement, this results in a taxpayer at the end of the day. Someone paying property taxes so that the grand list grows. Now, it may not be this huge influx of new dollars, but it's definitely going in the right direction. Our grand list in particular, downtown, needs growth. That's why I support this, along with the historic preservation aspect of it. But I'll be honest, we had another developer come to town years ago when I was mayor before it. And his product was not a taxpayer at the end of the day. It was more reduction in the grand list. And I didn't support that, even though the preservation piece was there. This does both. And that's why I support it. But I leave it to the body of the council if action is to take place tonight. Some of you have expressed concern. Others have asked very good questions. It's in your hands. The motion is before us as amended. Is there further discussion or advice or recommendation? If not, I will call for the vote. Seeing no other. All those in favor of the resolution as amended? It's unanimous. The vote is 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second? Ben Fatem Nash. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Unanimous. We are adjourned.